Antigua and Barbuda are well known as holiday destinations. We made a fast and boisterous sail north to take a look for ourselves at these two very different islands. One island busy with superyachts and parties. The other a quiet host to the largest frigate bird colony in the world, and where horses and donkeys roam free.
We are Amy and Matt. We spent the last 6.5 years sailing our 37-foot sailboat Florence around the world. In that time, we have crossed 4 oceans and over 46,000 miles have passed under our keel.
Now we have made it back to the Caribbean, we will explore these famous islands before we recross the North Atlantic Ocean to return to where we began this voyage in England.
Just after dawn in the Caribbean, and it's time for us to take Florence out to sea and sail on to another new country.
Sailing between islands in the Caribbean can be a bit wet and wild, but the boisterous trade winds make for a fast passage. Today we are sailing slightly into the wind and waves on a close reach, which makes the ride wetter than normal.
We left Guadeloupe at dawn this morning and we're sailing north towards Antigua, which is not only another island, but it's another country for us, and one that neither us or Florence have ever been to. It's been a pretty wet passage so far. It's 45 miles in total. But you get the open ocean swell from the Atlantic between the islands, and so we've had many waves over the bow, and I think I've had several over me too, so I'm feeling pretty salt encrusted, but it is a beautiful day for sailing nonetheless. We've got some gorgeous views of Montserrat just below us, and because there's so many boats in this area, we've also been sailing unintentionally in company, so there's been lots of interest on this passage so far.
We knew it was going to be fairly breezy for this sail up to Antigua, so we already had the staysail all prepared on the bow, and we've got 2 reefs in the main, so we're going along really nicely like that. You might ask why we didn't wait for a day when there's a little bit less breeze. Well, it was forecast to be a little bit less breeze today, but the forecast has changed, and we want to get to Antigua because we've got a very good friend flying in from the UK to visit us, and we want to be there in plenty of time before he arrives. And the next few days after today all look pretty similar. But it's not too windy. I mean, this is fine. This is normal trade wind sailing. I only got 22 knots at the moment, and Florence can handle it, no problems. Approaching Antigua, nowhere near as high as Guadeloupe, but beautiful and green. We're going to sail around into the lee side, so we're going to go and check in at Jolly Harbour. We're just sailing into the lee of Antigua, and it's really shallow around the island, so it's only 8 metres deep here, but because it's a sand bottom, the water's got a beautiful turquoise colour. It looks like a stunning island, really excited to go and have a look around, but I'm kind of not used to sailing around in less than 10 metres of water. It makes me feel really nervous.
Gonna have to get used to that for the Bahamas.
Yeah, the Bahamas is going to be really shallow. There we're going to be in more like 3 metres of water, so yeah. Have to learn to get used to it. We checked in Jolly Harbour, and we've now sailed round to Carlisle Bay on the South Antigua, and this is Absolutely beautiful bay, but today the trade winds are blowing really strongly and they're gusting over the top of the hills and just spinning Florence around in the anchorage, so it's not actually that comfortable. This island is drier than the islands that we've been in recently. Those were more rainforest islands further south, but Antigua seems to be more sandy, so instead of like the rainforest environment ashore, it's much more sandy. There's loads and loads of cacti. In fact, water is actually a problem on Antigua. They don't get much rainfall here and they don't have any natural springs, so they rely on reverse osmosis, which is converting seawater, salt water, into drinking water, like a lot of boats do where they have water makers.
On a calmer day, we sailed further along the coast to English Harbour. English Harbour was an important base for the British Navy back in the Napoleonic Wars, and it's surrounded by ruins of old forts. But now it's where the superyachts of the rich and famous hang out.
The superyachts are moored stern to where the ships were careened in Nelson's time to have their bottoms scrubbed and repaired, and the storehouses have been converted to fancy bars and restaurants. Florence doesn't quite fit in here, but thankfully there is a beautiful anchorage just outside Gallium Beach.
Here in English Harbour is actually where all of the Atlantic rowing boats come in, and last night we heard loads of whooping and cheering at about midnight, and there was actually a boat that was just finishing their Atlantic crossing, coming all the way from La Gomera in the Canary Islands to here in Antigua, and there's a whole host of boats which have been arriving over the last few weeks, anything from solo rowers up to the 4-person crews, and there's over 40 teams which are coming in here. It's pretty amazing to see it. This boat here is a solo rower, and then the group that came in last night had 3 people on board. But I can't imagine, knowing how much Florence rolls around in the Atlantic Ocean, I can't imagine being at sea for as long as they do on a boat this small. It says that it takes sometimes up to 100 days for a boat to get from La Gomera to here in Antigua, and it's a pretty long passage for a sailing boat if it takes them over 20. The record for the Atlantic Challenge is 29 days and 14 hours, but on average apparently it takes the boats about 55 days and as much as up to 100 days at sea on a boat this size.
We actually set off on our first Atlantic crossing from the same place, La Gomera in the Canaries, and it took us 21 days to sail across the Atlantic Ocean, although we split that down into 2 legs because we stopped off in Cape Verde on the way.
So this is the boat that we actually heard coming in and could see them in the distance last night. We saw the flares going off and everybody whooping, all their families cheering as they came in. It actually took them 49 days. Apparently it was 3 dads on board who had never rowed across the Atlantic before and fancied a challenge. I think they certainly got it. The funny thing is that this boat is actually called Flow. One of the top things to do in Antigua is to head up to Shirley Heights, which overlooks all of English and Falmouth Harbour. And on a Sunday and a Thursday they have rum and steel bands and live music. And it's been going on for a long time because our friend Ron, who's sailing with us at the moment, actually went there in the 80s when he was cruising the Caribbean. So this is his first time back since then. It'll be interesting to see if it's changed.
the sun's just going down over the Shirley Heights. It's really busy up here. The queue for the bar is about 250 metres long. The food and stuff looks amazing, but maybe we'll have to go and join that queue and wait. But it's not actually quite as vibrant as I was expecting it to be up here. From the bands, steel pan bands that we saw in Tobago, they went bouncing up and down. These guys, maybe they haven't warmed up yet, so it'll be interesting to see how things go once the sun goes down. But it's really nice to be up here. The views out over the bay and the boats in the anchorage are absolutely amazing.
I'm really surprised at the number of different British accents that we've heard up this hill. It seems that about 90% of the people here are actually from the UK. Ron's camera shy, but he says that the main difference is that in the 80s this was a way for the super yacht crews to get off the boat. They'd come up here, they'd drink as much as they could, they'd smoke as much as they could, and it was just a way for them to let their hair down. But he says now that it's much more of just a general tourist attraction. It's become famous, and it's still nice and it's still fun, but it seems very tame in comparison. But let's see what happens as the night goes on.
Today we're sailing up to Barbuda, which is about 30 miles north of Antigua. We've actually been waiting for the weather to ease off for us to do this, because the last few days it's just been howling really strong trade winds. And today it's dropped off a little bit, and then hopefully the next couple of days it'll drop off even more and we can enjoy Barbuda. Barbuda's a really flat island, so we've got to keep a good lookout because we won't really see it appear on the horizon until we're very close. And there's also a lot of reefs going up that way, so we need to be careful with the navigation on this bit.
It's not just reefs we have to look out for though. As we were sailing up the coast of Antigua, this cargo ship started making a violent turn right in front of us.
Okay, understood, we will bear off.
Okay, thank you, I really appreciate it. Thanks.
So that cargo ship was going clear across our bow, but then suddenly put its helm over and started doing a circle in front of us, and it was just swinging around. So we had no idea how to avoid it. Now normally as a sailing vessel versus a motor vessel, we would be the stand-on vessel, so we should keep a steady course. However, normally we're quite small, so we just try to get out of everybody's way. But when someone's doing that in front of you, you've just got no idea which way to turn, other than, well, even going back the way we went. We didn't know if that was going to work. So in that situation, we just radioed them up, and thankfully he responded straight away on the radio, told us what he was doing so we could take avoiding action.
If it's not ships or reefs, it's squalls. With a grey wall of rain approaching, we knew that would also be wind. We had already reefed the mainsail down, but we made the call to also completely furl away the genoa. And that turned out to be a good decision, as the wind got up to over 35 knots.
Balmy Caribbean weather sailing. This is what the Caribbean's really like.
15 minutes later, the squall had gone and we were back to beautiful sailing.
There's another squall on the horizon. I'm hoping this one's actually going to go behind us. But if not, we could be back to rain and 35 knots again. At the moment it's pretty nice.
Thankfully that squall missed us and we could enjoy sailing on to Barbuda.
What do you think of Barbuda so far?
The water here is absolutely spectacular. Antigua, the colour of the water is the same, but for some reason the water around Antigua is cloudy. But here it's been like 10 metres of water and we've been able to see the bottom. Looking forward to seeing what it's like in the anchorage.
how beautiful is this crystal clear turquoise waters? And it's just it's so shallow. It's only 3 meters where Florence is now, that the bright sun is just beating down, reflecting off the white sand bottom and creating this amazing turquoise color. Unfortunately, when we came in here last night, it was a lot calmer, and in the night the swell directions changed around from coming over the land to coming more around the end of the reef, so it's become really rolly, and Florence is now rolling around all over the place, which is why we've come on land, which isn't rolling, to spend a bit of time here, and then hopefully we'll go and find a more sheltered anchorage. But the anchorage we thought was going to be more sheltered is over there, on the other side of that sand point. And although we thought it was going to be sheltered over there, we've just looked over there, there's a massive mast from a superyacht over there, and that mast is waving back and forth, so I don't think it's going to be sheltered over there either.
Come over to the windward side of the island, and this is where all of the waves are coming from the Atlantic and pounding into the island, and there's loads of debris built up, including this huge patch of sargassum seaweed, which is the reason we have not had any luck fishing recently. Every time we put the line out between islands, it just gets totally tangled in this weed. Although the swell's actually probably not that big today, it's probably about 1.7 or 2 meters, the waves are really pounding the island. It's impressive to see.
Barbuda is so low-lying that you can't really see it until you're close to it, and it's surrounded by these treacherous reefs. And back in the day of pre-GPS and wooden sailing ships, apparently the people who lived on Barbuda made a really good income just from recovering the cargoes from wrecked ships.
Just somewhere here. Just gone. There!
Oh.
Sunset dolphins. Don't get much better than that.
It's quite special here already. Yeah, beautiful.
The national bird of Antigua and Barbuda is the frigate bird, so a visit to these islands wouldn't be complete without taking a closer look. You're not allowed into the frigate bird sanctuary without a guide, so we jumped onto a tour boat from Codrington.
So these are the frigate birds that we often see way out at sea flying around. And this is the biggest frigate bird colony in the world. And it's mating season at the moment, so the males have got these big red breasts all puffed up trying to attract the females. And then they have one chick, and the chicks are white, and the frigate birds that you can see with the white heads, they're the young juvenile birds, and then the ones with the black heads are the mature birds. See the white chick? See the little white chick? Even though the frigate birds do not have waterproof feathers, so they cannot land on the water, the male birds go to sea for many months, travelling thousands of miles across the oceans. Maybe that is where we will next see them. Next time we find a serious problem with Florence, a crack between the bulkhead and the hull. I'm not going to call it a crack anymore, it's a massive gap.
Don't forget to subscribe to catch the next episode. We release a video every 2 weeks.
If you'd like to find out more about behind the scenes on Florence, track our progress across the oceans in real time, find out where we are right now, or ask us pretty much anything, then please head over to our Patreon site and join the crew. We would like to thank everyone who supports us to make these videos possible, and a special thank you to our star patrons.